Yo, what's up guys, and I'm back with some more Java code. So what I've been working on recently is a Tic Tac Toe Bot. So it has a very simple and dumb algorithm, but it works. So let's check it out. So if I were to run this code, we get a board that looks something like this. So we have our blank spaces here, which I got these characters from literally just looking up this Unicode blank square whatever and copy and pasting it into the code. And so I create a board, and the coordinates are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's just put in 1. I'm going to go top left corner. And as you can see, the bot makes a response. So it randomly generates 1 if there's no really better move. Second move, you can't really win from a second move, so it just randomly generates 1. Now, let's say I were to go 2. So let's say I were to go to top middle, and so that's threatening me to win next move. Now they go and they end up blocking me. So, okay, well then let's, what if I do a completely random move? I just go to 9. Will they do something else, or will they actually win by going this bottom right corner? Bottom left corner. And as you can see, they win. So it's a very simple algorithm, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So this is the start of my code. You will need to import a few utilities, so array list, scanner, arrays, random. And they're all pretty self-explanatory. Except scanner, that's basically just your inputs. That allows me to give inputs to place my x's. And so here, this is the main function, and all of this goes under the main function. And it's really just the basic instructions, like the main point that tells what functions to run and how to run the game. So it starts by creating a list, and then immediately it sets up your board. So you create your list string called board, and you plug it into a function called setup. And really all it does is it adds a blank square to the board 9 times, because it's 0 to 8. It starts at 0, 9 times. And so that kind of creates your board. But then you may be wondering, okay, well, how do we actually print the board? How do we actually turn it from a list with 9 elements into the board, displaying the board? And I'm about to show you. So here it's a really simple while loop. It just creates a variable called start, and it's basically saying while start is equal to 1. It runs the game. So it's going to repeat it forever, basically, until something changes the variable start or just stops the game altogether. So we have print board, pboard, and it creates a string. This creates a array called sep, so separator. And why I made a array is so that instead of having to do that for loop again, I can just add it right then and there, just to make it easier. So how it works is basically if you have a for loop within a for loop. The outer for loop is for each row, and the inner for loop compiles the row. So it's using a variable called spot to keep track of what part of the board it's on, what coordinate it's on. And really all it does is it just adds 3 times. It adds the spot to the row, so it basically creates the row. It prints the row and joins it with the vertical line, and then I have this here and saying if a, so this outer loop, is less than 2, it prints the separator row, and it combines it. It basically combines the separator row with nothing, so there's no spaces, and it prints it. And so why I made it less than a, or when a has to be less than 2, is because if I just left it, it would actually create a separator at the very bottom of the board, which I didn't really want. So, it loops 3 times, but I needed it to print 2 separator rows. So just doing that prevents it from printing a third one. So that's really how I create my board. Then I print a line just to give it a little extra space, and then I do move. So it takes 2 parameters. It takes board, and it takes what team you're on, if you're X's or O's. So let's check out the move function. So the move function is very simple. It's right here, and as you can see, it takes 2 arguments. So really all it does is it creates an input object, it creates a loop, and it basically just takes your number. So it takes whatever number you input. And it's basically going to check if your number, so it puts your number equal to spot, and it checks spot minus 1 because, of course, lists start at 0, so you have to do 1 less than what you input. And it basically checks, does that spot have a blank space? And if it does, it replaces that spot with whatever team you're on, so either the X or the O. And if else, then it says squares occupied and loops back around, so you can put in another input. So it was pretty simple. And then we've just put some more spaces, just to look better. And then we check for the win. So how this works is I needed to use the win function for the bot, and I didn't want displaying all this whoever won and then exit the game, so I had this outside. So how the win function works is you plug in the situation, you plug in what team you're on, and if it results in a win, it outputs a 1. If it doesn't, outputs a 0. So I basically just say if it outputs a 1, print the board, so print what the board looks like, print x1, and then system.exit.0, which basically just exits the program. And again, I didn't put all that in the win function because I needed to use it when the bot is simulating the board. As you can see, the win function's right here. What I'm using here is I'm using an array of arrays, basically, and it's called a win list. And so all of these are the possible win combinations. And so now how it works is it creates a list of integers called check. I know I'm very inconsistent with lists and arrays, but I'm just still testing out the pros and cons of them. So now what happens is it basically just checks the board. So it goes to every spot of the board, and dot equals is really the same as just doing the double equal sign, and it's really just saying it's finding which spots contain X's or O's, so whichever you added as player. So it's basically going to let's say I put X in, it's going to check for all the X's on the board, and it adds it to my checklist. Now what we do is I create it's basically going through 0 through 7, so it's actually going through all the possible win scenarios, and scenario is going to be the win list, or that spot on the win list, so that certain scenario, that win scenario, and it really just checks if check contains scenario or the first spot of scenario, if it contains the second spot of scenario, and it contains the third spot of scenario. And so this really just checks this is basically just checking all the Xbots and saying, do the Xbots line up with this certain scenario, and if they do, you win. So if one of them does, it returns a 1, and if none of them do, if nothing matches up, it just returns a 0. So that was pretty simple. Now the draw function. I put this after the win because you could also win and have the board full at the same time. And the draw function is really simple. All it does is it creates a list called draw, and it goes to the board and it finds all of the blank spaces and adds it to draw, and if there's nothing in draw, it basically says draw and leaves the game. So then it prints the board, another space. Now we have bot move, which is very similar to the move function, but I just incorporated this the bot algorithm into it. So the bot move function, it's really quite simple. Really all it does is it takes the board, it takes the player of what the bot is, which in this case it's no, and it takes the op, which is X. And so it creates a new object called rand, which is a random object, and then it creates a new list called bot moves, and I'll explain what that does in a bit. So we have a loop that's going to cycle through all the possible moves it can make. It's going to cycle through all the coordinates of the board, and we're going to create a new board, or a duplicate of the current board called temp board, so we can mess with it. And it checks, does this spot have a space, and if it does, it's going to set that spot on the temp board equal to O, or whatever player it is. It's going to check, then it's going to plug temp board into the win function. It's going to check, does it win? And if it does win, it's going to set the actual board, or it's going to put an O on that spot on the actual board and return. If it doesn't win right away, so then what it's going to do is it's going to loop all the possible counter moves here. So it's going to go, nine spots of the board. So it's going to create a new board called temp move. It's a duplicate of the temp board, and again, we can mess with this other temporary board now. It's going to check, okay, is this spot have a space or like a blank square, and if it does, it's going to set that spot to op. So in this case, it's the X. Then it's going to check if X wins, and if X wins in this case, it's going to add it to bot moves. And so what this does is it basically just stores it and keeps it for later. Because we want to prioritize winning. So if there was a spot that you could block a move from X, and it came first on the board, so if it was maybe if you go in spot 1, it will block X, but you could win if you go in spot 9 or something, right? So I want to prioritize winning over blocking. And so then if no one wins, it goes out of all this madness of braces. So if bot moves is equal to 0, so if there's no blocking moves, then it's basically going to generate a random number, and if that spot of the random number on the board does have a space, then it's going to just set that random move. If it doesn't, it's going to loop again. And then if there's more than 0 elements in bot moves, it's going to pick a random number, and it's going to check if that number's in bot moves, and if that spot on the board is blank. And if it does, it's going to place that O on the board. And so why I had this random number is, I don't know, I just wanted to mix it up. What I could have done instead is I could have just gotten the first spot of bot moves and just placed it down, but I like to mix it up. But that's really it. So after it makes its move, it's going to print some more lines, and then it's going to check if that bot won, and if it does, it's going to say O1, and it ends the game. And then again, if it doesn't win, it checks for a draw. And then it loops back over again. So that's really it. That's what I've been working on. I've been learning more about lists and arrays and variables and all the good stuff. So I'm probably not going to be able to post my chess coding video this weekend. I've been really busy this week, and I'm going to be really busy this weekend, so I'm probably not going to have enough time. So I'll probably post that sometime next weekend. And I might post another Java video sometime next week, so keep an eye out for that. And I'll try to find a way to post this code in the description, so if any of you guys want to test it out or dissect it a bit or even improve upon it, feel free to do that. But that's about it. Peace.